and he said, what was the axiom that you said was self-evident?
Uh,
Hegel.
wait, me or him?
Zero.
Oh, the law of identity. A equals A.
Okay. So the law
Or
of identity, the law of
A is not
identity.
equal to not A. Excuse me.
Well, that's the law of non-contradiction. Okay.
Okay,
So I mean, we could use either one. It doesn't matter. But they'll say the law of non-contradiction. The law of non-contradiction is not simply a particular; it's a universal. Okay. That's why the word law. Okay. In other words, A is a placeholder for all entities. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that A being a placeholder for all entities can never equal or coexist with its negation. Well, when you say it's self-evident, do you mean it's self-evident to your sense perception or something outside of sense perception, like it's self-evident to your thinking?
Well, if you take the corollary of it, where A equals not A, you can't build on that in any.
Or how about that sometimes A could equal not A? That would be a third option. I don't agree with it, but it's I'm just saying the issue is not just A cannot equal not A or A equals not A. How about that for some entities A does not equal not A, and other entities A can, or the converse.
Well, I would say in that case it ceases to become an axiom, and at that point,
when you say the axiom is self-evident, evident to what? Your sense perception? Or is it self-evident to something other than sense perception? And in that case, you would have to say that it's self-evident to your thinking or your reasoning.
Conceiving.
Or that's another way, or conceiving. So what you're saying is it's self-evident to my thinking about the sum total, the set of all entities. Well, how is that self-evident? Just because you think it is? In other words, the properties of all entities are a certain way universally because I think of it that way?
Well, specifically because if you take the corollary, or if you reduce that so that it's not an axiom anymore, it can't be built on in a constructive way. Like,
right.
That just means there's no other way to think of it, right?
But the point is that to claim that a specific axiom is self-evident, then it wouldn't be an axiom anymore, because then it would have a justification. An axiom is a fundamental starting point. I'm using the word axiom probably in a more formal sense rather than a loose sense. Right. Okay. So if you take the axiom of the law of non-contradiction, then there's no logical priorness to support that starting point. So the adoption of that idea is irrational because it doesn't have a rational basis. Now, when I say it doesn't have a rational basis, sometimes, I'm not saying this is true of you, sometimes people understand that they think, well, when I say it's irrational, that they're thinking, oh, crazy. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that there isn't a reasoned propositional stance for X or that axiom. Okay, that's what it means to be rational. Okay, so if somebody has one or more axioms, right, by definition, those axioms are irrational or non-rational because they don't have a reasoned basis for that. Because if they did, if there was a rational justification for said axiom, then it would no longer be an axiom. It ceases to be an axiom.
See, this is exactly what I was talking about when I said the debate is very difficult to take past a certain point, because this is a very jargon-filled, very hair-splitting like iteration of the problem between rationalists and religious people. And I don't think this debate, the limits of this debate, I don't think are indications that the two people can't live together harmoniously. But the problem is, science will always say, or science, but a rationalist will always say, this is true. And even though the premise might be true, the religious minded person will always try and take a step back and say, well, what's the root of that truth? And eventually it gets to the...
Well, you're not, well, you see, you're not ultimately a rationalist. You're ultimately an irrationalist, because I'll ask you, what is the ultimacy of reality? Is it rational or irrational?
Ultimately, when you ask a question that a rationalist cannot answer...
If you don't hold to theism, and especially Christian theism, then you're going to have to believe, then by not holding to that, then the ultimacy of reality is non-rational or irrational. Well, so rationalists.
Okay.
The ultimate rationalist is the Christian theist.
I would disagree, because...
Do you know why?
Because you're willing to take that next step and explain the root.
No. The Christian theist is the ultimate rationalist, because in that model of reality, the ultimacy of reality is the rational mind of God, who exists non-contingently and is the creator of all things. Now, if you don't hold to that, okay. Now, I'm not asking you to accept that the Christian is the ultimate rationalist from a materialistic point of view, because the materialists think, well, the Christian's irrational because there's no God. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is the Christian is the ultimate rationalist with respect to its worldview. But let me just give me 10 more seconds.
Okay, sure.
In the non-theistic worldview, okay, such a person, in terms of their model of reality, believes that the ultimacy of reality is irrational. In other words, the very foundation doesn't start with an immutable universal mind.
See, that's where I would disagree.
Okay, then you would be a theist.
No, not exactly. I would say that a rationalist, when faced with the primacy of existence itself, would have to take the agnostic position of saying,
you believe that rationalism arises from and is derivative from irrationalism. I'll ask you a very simple question, okay? And by the way, it's nice to have a conversation. You and I are not agreeing on a whole host of things, but there's no sparks flying, no heat being generated, and it's nice, and there's no trolls, trolling. Do you believe that the ultimacy of reality, upon which everything is ultimately derivative, is a personal mind or not?
No.
Okay, then you believe.
Even then,
ultimacy of reality. Yeah, you believe that the ultimacy of reality is irrational. Okay.
I would
believe rationality arises out of the irrational.
When I'm faced with that question, I would say that the standards by which we measure our world and the logic that sort of founds its foundations ultimately reside within that universe itself, and is therefore inadequate to explain anything outside of it. So the idea of applying rationalistic principles, which are very much sort of inseparable from the material world, to an aspect of that very, very by definition falls outside of the material world, is a natural limit of logic itself. And therefore, faced with that problem, we have to appeal to our own lack of understanding and say that answer is either unknowable or will only be known once a realm outside of logic is proven, which probably won't happen for a very long time. And I think the rationalist would be satisfied with that